"Mom, leave the way," Willie shouted, raising the flower vase high, ready to strike his bride a second time. "No, my darling boy. It's Mommy." "Calm down. Put the vase down. Please. She's already lying in a pool of blood." "Please drop it, darling," Mrs. Adesua pleaded, her hands trembling. But no, Willie wasn't done. He raised the vase higher, and no one expected what came next. How can a man raise his hand against his bride on their wedding day and make her bleed? Not once, not twice, but 6 brides for 6 straight months. And what happens when a mother's blind love covers her son's cruelty? Willie had walked 6 women to the altar and left them broken every single time. His mother always defended him, even when the truth was clear to everyone. She would stand firm, point at the women, and tell them to their faces that they were the problem. Her darling boy could never be wrong. But that day, on the 7th wedding, life placed her right in the center of her own son's cruelty. And the unexpected happened. Willie was the kind of man people noticed the moment he entered a room. Tall, broad-shouldered, always well-dressed in the finest clothes money could buy. His shoes sparkled, his perfumes announced his presence before he even spoke, and his car engines roared like lions wherever he went. To the outside world, he was a catch. The kind of man every young woman dreamed of marrying. Wealthy, handsome, and admired by many in the community. Whenever he drove through the street in his latest car, young men looked at him with envy. And young women whispered, "Ah, if only he could notice me." But behind closed doors, Willie was a different man. He was violent, arrogant, and had no respect for women. To him, women were toys. Something to use when he wanted and discard when he was tired. His charming smile could fool strangers, but those who got close to him saw the darkness in his heart. The only person who never saw that darkness was his mother. Mrs. Adesua, a respected widow, loved her only son more than anything else in the world. She was a strong woman who raised him alone after losing her husband at an early age. She believed Willie was her greatest blessing. And because of that, she defended him no matter what. Each time his brides cried out for help, each time people whispered about his temper, each time he humiliated a woman in public, Mrs. Adesua would wave it off. "My Willie? My darling boy? Impossible. They are only jealous. He is a good man. These women are the problem, not him." And the community? They shook their heads but kept quiet. Willie's family was powerful, his mother was respected, and nobody wanted to be the one to confront them. So the truth lived in whispers, and the women who suffered walked away in silence. Willie's story with women was always the same. 6 times he had walked women to the altar as his brides. 6 times he had left them in tears. He hit them, disgraced them, and sometimes even called off the wedding, right there on the wedding day. All this happened in just 6 straight months. The first bride had left with bruises on her face just weeks after the wedding. Neighbors had heard her screams at night, but by morning, Mrs. Adesua was already standing in front of her son's house, covering the story. She went to the girl's family and said, "Your daughter is too stubborn. She does not know how to respect a man. That is why there is a problem. My son is innocent," and the girl was sent home in shame. The second bride faced humiliation in front of hundreds of guests. During their wedding reception, Willie had dragged her across the hall because she danced with her cousins in a way he did not like. The crowd had gasped. The bride had run out in tears, but again his mother defended him. He was only jealous because he loves her too much. Is that a crime? The third bride was accused of disrespect. Willie shouted at her during church service because she dared to correct him softly when he made a mistake in public. That marriage ended the same week it started. His mother told the girl's family, "Your daughter does not know her place. A wife must not correct her husband before others." The 4th to 6th brides suffered the same fate. One was left with bruises, another was thrown out in the middle of the night. The last was abandoned at the altar after enduring weeks of humiliation. And each time, Mrs. Adesua had an explanation ready. She would go to the families, look them in the eye and say, "Your daughters were not good enough for my son. They were ungrateful, rebellious, and shameless. My Willie deserves better, and Willie?" With every failed marriage, with every woman chased away, he grew more reckless. He knew his mother would always defend him. He knew she would never admit his faults. So he became worse, raising his hands quicker, shouting louder, and treating women like disposable shoes. The community watched in silence. Some pitied the women, some feared for the next, and some shook their heads, saying, "This boy will meet his match one day. No man can go on like this forever." But when? No one knew. Just after the 6th failed marriage, in the 7th month, Willie made another announcement. At a family gathering, with his mother smiling proudly by his side, he declared that he was engaged again. This time to a young gentlewoman named Tessie. She was beautiful, soft-spoken, and came from a humble but wise family. She was the kind of woman people described as pure-hearted. When people heard the news, they were shocked. Another one? Does this boy think marriage is a game? Friends, relatives, and even the priest began to whisper to Mrs. Adesua, "Mama Willie, this is not normal. 6 broken marriages cannot all be the women's fault. Open your eyes. Something is wrong with your son," but she refused to listen. With pride, she lifted her head and said, "You people don't know my son like I do. He is a good man. Those women failed him, but this time it will be different. Tessie is gentle, she is humble, and she will understand him. This marriage will last." Tessie's family was not blind. They had heard the stories. They had seen the bruises, the tears, and the shame left behind by other brides. They hesitated. They warned their daughter, "Think carefully. Marriage to this man may bring you sorrow," but Mrs. Adesua, as always, stepped in. She visited their home, sat with Tessie's parents, and spoke with confidence. "I promise you, my son has changed. He has learned from his mistakes. Your daughter will not suffer what others suffered. I will make sure of it." Her words carried weight. She was a respected woman in the community, known for her boldness. Against their fears, Tessie's family agreed, hoping that perhaps this time the story would be different. But deep down, many people still whispered, 6 women cannot lie. Something is waiting ahead, and when it comes, may God open the eyes of his mother. The week before the wedding, Tessie began to notice things that made her uneasy. Willie's temper was sharp, his words cut deep, and sometimes his hands moved faster than his thoughts. One evening, as they prepared for the big day, Tessie gathered the courage to speak to his mother. "Ma," she said softly, her voice trembled. "I don't know if I can do this. Willie gets angry too quickly. I fear he may hurt me one day." But Mrs. Adesua frowned. She waved her hand as if brushing dust off a table. "My daughter, listen to me. Marriage is not a bed of roses. A man may get angry, yes, but you, as a woman, have to learn patience. You have to endure. Endurance is what makes a marriage strong, not listening to side talks." Tessie's heart sank. She had hoped for comfort, for support, for someone to take her fears seriously. Instead, she was silenced. With no one to turn to, she decided to swallow her pain and continue. The wedding day finally arrived. It was supposed to be a day of joy, with white decorations hanging across the hall, soft music playing, and guests dressed in colorful lace filling the seats. Caterers rushed in and out, preparing delicious meals for the guests. The bride, Tessie, looked like an angel in her flowing wedding gown. Her veil rested gently on her head. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the bouquet. Willie stood proudly beside her in a sharp black suit, smiling at the cameras, shaking hands with guests. But behind those smiles, tension was already building. Just before the occasion started in full, Willie pulled Tessie aside into a private room. His eyes were dark and his jaw tightened. "Why were you smiling at that usher guy?" "You think I didn't see you?" he ranted. "Usher guy?" Tessie gasped. "Willie, what are you saying?" "I wasn't even greeting or smiling at any usher guy. That was my cousin. A family. He only greeted me politely. That's all. Are you insane?" Willie ranted even harder. "Are you saying I'm a liar? You think I didn't see you wave to someone careless out there? Wave carelessly? To who, Willie? Are you suspecting me of cheating on you? On our wedding day?" Tessie asked, curious. But Willie's anger had already ignited. "You have the guts to question me? Have you gone nuts?" He shouted. "Don't ever in your entire miserable life talk back at me ever again. You hear me?" Tessie was startled by the words he just used on her. Miserable life. On their wedding day. She staggered, clutching her chest in shock. She couldn't say any more words. She didn't need to. She knew his anger issue, and she tried to swallow her pain and tears for peace sake. But even at that, Willie wasn't done. That very moment, Willie grabbed a flower vase from the table, and before Tessie could move, he struck her head with it. The sound of the impact was sharp. Tessie screamed, blood trickled down her forehead. She staggered backward. Her bouquet fell to the floor. Screams exploded outside as some guests peeped in, seeing the blood. "Jesus, he has killed her," voices cried. Tessie's knees became weak, but before she could collapse fully, Willie raised the vase again, his face twisted with rage. He was ready to hit her a second time. At that very moment, the door flung open. Mrs. Adesua rushed in, dressed in elegance. She froze at the sight of Tessie bleeding, her white gown stained red, in the pool of her own blood. "What is going on here?" Mrs. Adesua thundered. She looked at Tessie, then at Willie, then back at Tessie. "What is the matter with you, young lady?" She barked at Tessie. "You provoked him, didn't you?" "Oh yeah, I know you did. Now you got what you wanted. That serves you right." She turned to Willie. She didn't even bark at him for hitting his bride, even when she saw the vase in his hand and Tessie's bleeding. Instead, she spoke calmly as she normally did, supporting his brutal actions. "My darling boy," she whispered, standing between them. "Calm down, drop the vase." But he didn't listen. She repeated, "Willie, it's Mommy. Put the vase down, darling. Calm down, okay? Mummy's here now. Look at me, look at me. Drop it. Drop it." But Willie's rage had blinded him. He pointed the vase at his own mother, shouting, "Mom, move out of the way. If you love me, leave me to handle her. I will teach her a lesson she will never forget." Mrs. Adesua's voice cracked as she spoke. "You already did, darling. She's lying in the pool of her own blood now. I'm sure she has learned. Now, hand the vase over, okay? Give it to me." But Willie didn't stop. His anger was like a wildfire. Mrs. Adesua was standing in his way. He couldn't control it anymore, and in that moment, before anyone could understand what was happening, he lifted the vase and struck his own mother on the head, mercilessly, just as he had done to Tessie. The sound silenced the room. Mrs. Adesua's eyes widened in shock. Her hands shook as she reached for balance. Then Willie shoved her violently, and she crashed to the ground. Blood flowed from her head as gasps and cries filled the place. The hall that was filled with joy seconds earlier was now thrown into chaos. Screams echoed from every corner. Guests stood frozen, some covering their mouths, others rushing forward in confusion. "What kind of madness is this?" a man shouted. "Did he just hit his own mother?" another whispered in horror. Women wailed, pulling their head ties. Men shook their heads in disbelief. Children clung to their mothers, frightened at the sight of blood. The beautiful wedding turned into a nightmare. Just like Tessie, Mrs. Adesua now lay on the cold tiled floor too, unconscious. Blood stained her dress. The same son she had defended all her life had turned against her. The son she called "my darling boy" had struck her without mercy. For the first time, the entire community witnessed Willie's true face, not just as a cruel husband for these past 6 consecutive months, but as a monster who could even harm the womb that bore him. Whispers filled the air. "Now we see the truth. He has done it to his own mother. Serves her right. The women were right all along. What kind of man is this?" Everywhere exploded in chaos. Guests cried and shouted, trying to understand what had just happened. Tessie lay on one side, her white wedding gown soaked in blood. Mrs. Adesua lay on the other, lifeless, her wrapper soaked in blood too. The priest's voice cut through the noise, trembling with anger and sorrow. He pointed at Willie, his eyes burned. "What kind of man strikes even the womb that bore him?" The hall went silent for a moment. His words rang like thunder in every ear. Even Willie froze. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The bride's family exploded in rage. Tessie's father shouted, "This marriage is over. Right here, right now. We will not give our daughter to a beast." His brothers moved closer, ready to fight, but others held them back. It was at this moment, in the center of it all, that something suddenly snapped inside Willie. He turned his eyes from Tessie to his mother, then back again. He saw them both lying unconscious, both covered in blood, and something inside him cracked. His eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat. For the first time, fear and shock replaced his arrogance. He dropped the broken vase from his hand. It shattered into smaller pieces, just like his pride. He staggered backward, whispering, "Mom, Tessie." It was as though the veil covering his eyes had been lifted now. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Shouts filled the air as people rushed forward. "Take them to the hospital! Hurry!" they shouted. Within minutes, chaos turned into frantic movement. 2 cars were brought to the front of the hall. Tessie was carried out first, her parents crying and begging her to hold on. Mrs. Adesua was carried next, her wrapper soaked with blood. The once beautiful wedding reception turned into a crime scene. Plates of untouched food, half-empty drinks, and decorations remained. But joy was gone. Guests left in silence, shaking their heads, whispering about the monster Willie had become. Willie followed behind like a shadow. He did not ride in the same car with his bride or his mother. He rode alone, his hands trembled, his heart pounded, his mind raced with regret. At the hospital, nurses ran up and down the corridors. The sound of stretchers rolling across the floor echoed like a drumbeat of panic. Tessie was rushed into one ward and Mrs. Adesua into another. Doctors shouted instructions, machines beeped, and the atmosphere was tense. Willie stood in the hallway, his suit stained with blood, his eyes were swollen from tears. He looked nothing like the proud, wealthy young man the community once admired. He looked like a lost child. Minutes later, a doctor stepped out of Tessie's ward. His face was serious, his hands still gloved. "Your bride suffered a severe concussion and internal bleeding," he said. "We managed to stop it, but she needs urgent brain surgery. Without it, she may not survive." Willie's knees went weak. He staggered against the wall, clutching his head. Tears rolled down his face. "No, no, Tessie. This cannot be happening. Please, God," he whispered in a shaky voice, as if finally realizing what he had done. Before he could recover, another nurse walked quickly towards him. "Sir," she said firmly, "your mother also collapsed from the head trauma. But during the tests, we discovered something else. She has been managing a chronic heart condition silently. Today's stress and the force she suffered triggered a crisis. She needs emergency heart surgery immediately, but it is a 50-50 chance. She may survive, or we may lose her." Willie's whole world collapsed in that moment. His chest tightened, his breath came in short gasps. The arrogance he once carried so proudly was gone. His violence had brought him to this place, where both the women he loved most now lay between life and death. He dropped to the floor, hitting the cold tiles with his palms. His voice cracked as sobs tore through him. "God, please," he cried. His tears soaked the floor. "Please, spare them. If you give me one more chance, I swear on my life, I will never lift my hand against any woman again. I will change, Lord. I will change. Please, God, don't take them away from me." Doctors and nurses hurried past, but Willie remained on his knees. For the first time in his life, he was not proud. For the first time, he was not arrogant. He was broken, helpless, and full of regret. Both Tessie and Mrs. Adesua were wheeled into surgery. The doors closed behind them. Willie remained outside, shaking like a leaf in the wind. Hours crawled like years. Willie sat slumped against the wall, his head rested on his knees. His eyes were swollen from crying. His once perfect suit was crumpled and stained. He looked nothing like the man who had stood so confidently just hours earlier. Every second felt like a knife cutting deeper into his soul. Nurses kept rushing past him, machines continuously beeped in nearby wards, but all Willie could do was whisper prayers under his breath. "Please, God, don't let them die. Please give me one more chance." After 4 hours, the doctor from Tessie's surgery finally came out. His face was tired, but there was a small smile. "Her surgery was successful," he said. "She is stable now. She will need time, care, and monitoring, but she has a chance to recover." Relief washed over Willie. He closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath, grateful to God for the success. But he could not celebrate yet. His mother was still in the operating room. The clock ticked slowly. Every tick echoed in his ears like thunder. He stood, paced, sat, and stood again. His hands trembled as he prayed over and over. After 8 long hours, 8 straight hours of waiting, the chief surgeon finally emerged. His face was pale with exhaustion, but calm. "Your mother's surgery was also successful," he said gently. "It was very difficult, but she made it. She is alive." Willie couldn't control the emotions anymore. He broke down completely, his legs gave way, and he fell to the cold hospital floor. His tears soaked his suit as he cried loudly, not caring who was watching. For the first time in his life, Willie wasn't crying out of anger. He wasn't crying because someone had defied him. He was crying out of genuine gratitude, out of relief, out of the deep sorrow of a man who had finally seen his own destruction and begged for mercy. The hospital became Willie's new home. For days he walked from one ward to another, carrying a heart heavier than stone. In one room, Tessie lay silently, her head wrapped in bandage, her skin pale, her body weak. He would stand at her bedside for hours, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, praying silently that she would not slip away. In the other room, his mother, Mrs. Adesua, lay on her hospital bed, her once strong body now weak, her face marked with pain. Willie sat beside her like a child, holding her hand gently, afraid to let go. Days passed like this until, one morning, Mrs. Adesua's eyes slowly opened. She blinked against the light, then turned her gaze toward her son. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. "Willie," she whispered weakly, "I almost lost my life. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only destroying you." Her words pierced his heart like a sword. He bowed his head, tears dripped onto her hand, and his voice cracked as he spoke. "No, Mom, don't say that. It wasn't you, it was me. I was the monster. I hurt women who loved me. I almost killed Tessie. And I almost killed you. But I have changed from today. I promise I will never be the same again." Mrs. Adesua closed her eyes as tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time, she saw clearly what her blind love had created. For the first time, she understood. Willie stayed by her side until she drifted back to sleep. Then he moved to Tessie's ward. Tessie was awake now. Her eyes was heavy with pain, but open. Willie's knees hit the ground the moment he saw her. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he held her hand carefully, as though she would break. "Tessie," he whispered, his voice shook, "if you never forgive me, I will understand. But please know, I am done with violence. I will spend the rest of my life protecting you, not hurting you. Please, give me one more chance to show you I have changed." The room was silent except for the beeping machines. Nurses passing by slowed down, touched by the scene. Family members stood at the corner, watching quietly. The atmosphere was heavy, full of emotion. Tessie's lips trembled. She turned her face away, unable to look at him. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she sobbed quietly. Finally, after a long silence, she spoke in a broken whisper. I forgive you, but I don't think I can do this with you anymore." Her words shattered Willie. His body shook as fresh tears poured down his face. He pressed his forehead against her hand, crying like a child. He knew he did not deserve forgiveness. He knew he had destroyed something beautiful. And even though Tessie had spoken words of forgiveness, she had also broken the engagement. Still, he did not argue. He did press further. He only nodded slowly, his voice choked with pain. "I understand," he said softly. "Even if you walk away, I will carry this lesson all my life. I will never be the same again. And I pray that one day you may look at me and see a different man, a changed man." Everyone in the room was touched. Some wept silently, others whispered prayers. Willie sat there, broken and humbled, wishing for a second chance and hoping that someday, somehow it would come. Friends, viewers, brothers and sisters. This is what happens when arrogance blinds a man, and when a mother's blind love covers cruelty. One moment of rage almost destroyed the very people Willie loved most. His pride, his violence, and his mother's constant defense nearly cost 2 lives. But life gave him a second chance, one he must never waste again, if he ever has the opportunity to prove it. So what do you think? Should Tessie give Willie another chance and go on with the marriage? Or should she walk away, leaving him to face the full consequences of his actions? And what about Mrs. Adesua? Will she live long enough to see her son truly change? Or will Willie's violent past still catch up with him in ways he cannot escape? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, if you've ever seen or had this kind of experience, share your story with us. I'll love to read them. And if you enjoyed this story, don't just keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to Roots of the African Tales for more real-life inspired stories with deep lessons like this one. Until next time, bye for now, guys.